Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Niemeyer. The mission of Student of Money is to connect listeners like you to a community of like-minded individuals to help you achieve your goal of financial freedom through entrepreneurship, investing, real estate, and personal development. This is episode 34. All right, I am super excited to introduce you to today's guest. And if you're watching this video version on YouTube, you probably already know who it is. But for those of you listening to the audio on our podcasting platforms, then you're going to want to stay tuned to what this 30-year real estate veteran has to say. It's about a 30-minute interview. We got invited down to their office, so let's get started. All right, guys, we're on location for this week's podcast. I'm extremely excited to have on my show today Darryl High of High Properties. So Darryl started High Properties 35 years ago in 1988 with one residential property and has grown to be one of the largest developers and owner-operators in the state of Iowa. The company is vertically integrated and has in-house land development and construction as well as in-house property management. So welcome to the show, Darryl High.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, hey, it's great. Thank you for inviting me down to to your office. This is awesome. I actually watched this building. You rehabbed it, right?
I did.
So, and we'll talk about that a little bit where, but you mainly do new development and construction.
We do. We will buy some properties if we can find them. That's been difficult recently. We started in the business buying properties, and then as time went on, we started to develop our own and build our own.
So you bought pre-existing, or let's just go back to 1988.
Sure. It's actually kind of a good story, and it's one I've had an opportunity to tell a few times. The city of Cedar Rapids had a rehabilitation property over at 858 18th Street Southeast. And people ask me, they go, "You can remember it?" And I go, "I can remember all of them." And so 858 18th Street Southeast was for sale, and I put a purchase offer in on it for $10,000 in 1988, and it needed a lot of rehab. And they had some, I think $5,000 or $10,000 worth of rehab money that was available through the city. The problem is I didn't have the $10,000. And so I went down to the local bank just a few blocks from here, Guarantee Bank, and I met with Tom Nugent, who was the loan officer, and I told him my spiel, and I was 19 years old. And he said, "Darryl, I'll loan you the money, but you're going to have to get your parents to co-sign for you." And so he did, and my parents did co-sign for me, and I bought it and rehabbed it and rented it, and proceeded to let the tenants non-pay me for a while, and I finally got them out, learned a lesson, and they filed bankruptcy. And the first expedition in Darryl High's property ownership was not very successful, but it was something that I was pretty passionate about. And so from there, I bought another property, and they were all small, single family, older properties. Then I bought some duplexes, and I kind of went from there. And 35 years later, here we are.
Yeah, here we are. So you said when you first started out, obviously you didn't have any money.
Right.
Parents had to co-sign. How did you finance it? The bank gave you the money, but did you have to have, like my first deal, I put 80% down first, and then I did another 10% second, and then we kind of scraped the money together to kind of get it going. Right. It sounds like you kind of had to do the same thing. This was back in 88, right? Early 90s. Right. And you could probably get a first and a second, but when you're doing rehabs and constructions, a lot of that might be after repair value they look at and what they're lending on.
I can't remember exactly the whole terms, but we had a little bit of money. I say we. I had a little bit. I say we now because I'm married, but I had a little bit of cash that I put in, and then I did all the labor. I mean, I did everything except run the wires and do the furnace, rebuilding retaining walls and so forth, and painting and drywall and scrubbing the hardwood floors and so forth. So I had maybe a little sweat equity, but that was how I got the first one started.
So when was that aha moment where you said, I can't do this just by myself all the time, and I got to start hiring some of this out.
Well, I think that incrementally as my business grew, I was always pretty hands-on. It was always part of, working on the assets. And in the early days, I went between myself trying to management, which was probably not the right idea, to hiring a third-party manager in the business. But up until I was still running a skid loader, 10 years ago. Maybe a little bit longer, 15 years ago. Halfway through, I'm a hands-on guy. I drive a pickup truck. I know how to build things, and so back in the early days, I had grown up. My dad was a hog farmer. My uncles were landscapers. I grew up out the house working every day, so I could load and unload and do what it needed to be done. And so as we grew, I think that one of the main turning points was when I decided to manage myself. So that was probably at maybe 60 units or 80 units, somewhere in there. And then from there, and that was, kind of a loss leader in the beginning, because you're not making enough money really the property management company's not being profitable, but at least you're controlling your own destiny in the type of tenants you get and your expense control and so forth. So from there, I was able to start that process. And really that was just with a couple of people, like a maintenance. Adam Green was my first employee. Adam's a very successful general contractor in the state of Florida now. Left me and went on out to Denver and became very successful. But I remember when Adam started with me, he had a wife and a newborn, and we were going to tackle the world, just him and I, and property management, and by then we were building some houses and so forth.
Yeah, no, that's great. So you really were hands-on and early on and doing, but and I am too, and that's I was telling you earlier, that's kind of my flaw, is I'm so hands-on that
Right.
I have a really hard time letting go of that and having someone else manage my property, and it's kind of held me back. And so now I'm trying to figure out, who can I partner with, who can I would I hire and or just bring it in house, because you're very vertically integrated.
Right.
You do your own management, and you only manage your properties.
Right.
And same thing with your construction is it's all vertically integrated. But I'm assuming too, with the construction, like, how many employees do you have today?
25.
25. Okay, so that's pretty slim. That's pretty.
Yeah.
So you're yeah. And how many of those are on property management, and how many of those are on construction?
So 21 or 2 are probably property management. There's only 3 or 4 of us in construction development.
Okay, and how many total units do you have today?
About 1,250 under that are built and running, and then we have about 800 in some form of development, construction pipeline.
Yeah, so you're doing a lot of development, because I'll tell you, to get here to your office, I had to drive by one of your properties, and then when I look online, so you're in the Cedar Rapids Hiawatha market,
Mm-hmm.
you're in the Waterloo Cedar Falls market, you're in Iowa City Coralville, and of course Tiffin,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're in Davenport. So you're in all of the major eastern Iowa markets, and of course, I really like that you're in Tiffin. I was like, because that's just exploding. That
Sure.
area is really exploding,
Yeah.
and these are big developments. 75 acres and or more of where you're developing, and it's primarily, is it all multifamily?
A lot of it is. That multifamily is the lane we like to be in. We do a little bit of commercial, because sometimes the land development calls for that. But if we had our druthers, we bought the 75-acre South of Prairie School college community, and most of that is going to be a version of multifamily. There'll be some assisted living that will sell off. And we're going to Dubuque, so we're partnering with Conlin Construction in Dubuque to do a project up there, and we're excited about that. It'll expand our footprint into that market, which is somewhere we've wanted to go for a long time.
Yeah, I love Dubuque. I've got a rental in Dubuque, And I started in student housing and kind of transitioned to workforce and family apartment complexes. But Dubuque, I think, is another gem out there. So let me, since you are in Eastern Iowa, I mean, this is not exactly a top 50 market. And I've heard this in the past. This isn't East Coast. This isn't West Coast. This isn't the Sun Belt. It's Midwest. It gets cold here. Winters are a little harsh. Populations are not really increasing dramatically.
Right.
How do you look at this sub-market, or this is kind of a second tier market?
Well, I think we really appreciate Eastern Iowa for what it is. I moved here from Orlando, Florida. I actually just got back from 2 weeks on the West Coast. My daughter lives in Irvine, California, which is there in Orange County, and we're very blessed that we live here. I do believe that we are on the tipping point, especially in the corridor of our area growing to that kind of 500,000 population. And I believe when we get there, you can go back and look at historic communities or areas that got to that tipping point, and then there was nice growth. And I think you're starting to see some of that out by the airport. I think you're starting to see some of that with some of the more national guys who are looking around in our market. So I think it's a pro and a con. I mean, I can tell you that for me as a business owner, I couldn't do what I do in Orange County, California. I don't have enough money, and there's really just so little amount of raw ground or anything to work on. So we're blessed to be here, and we're happy about Eastern Iowa. And I feel like we've got a lot of really talented developers too, and real estate people, and economic development people that are out growing our communities. And now that the DOT is really engaged on the 8380 interchange and expanding 380, and Tower Terrace is getting done, and the airport is growing with Marty's leadership. I mean, these are all really positive things, and I think for most of us, or all of us that are here and have an opportunity to work in Eastern Iowa, I think it's a good place to be. I always say this, when Teleconnect went public, everybody wanted to be with Clark McLeod. But the thing I always ask people is, would you have went with Clark when he worked in his garage in Bowman Woods? And most people go, I don't know if I'm going over and working this guy's garage. So you got to take your opportunity when it's there, because everybody wants to be there, in the Super Bowl. The question is, do you want to do the work in spring practice, which is what I believe we are. I think we got great opportunity in Eastern Iowa.
And you're really embedded into the community. You're on a couple boards, and so you're tied into the city. So like last night, you were at a city council meeting, and I'm assuming you were talking about a development that you were doing with them. So you're constantly working, and kind of what do they want to have? What do they want to develop?
Sure.
Tell me about how you work with the community.
Well, over the years, we have, I think, built a relationship with most of the communities that we work in. We pride ourselves on doing good work, and because we own the assets long term, a lot of the concern when you show up and you're the multifamily guy is, oh my God, I don't want apartments. But for us, maybe we have a little easier time because we've developed properties 20 plus years ago. The one example I'll use is over on Edgewood Road. I don't know if it's the one you drove by, because we own a few over there, off 29th Street, just north of O Avenue. And when we replatted that Cypress Point, we had, like 100 neighbors in the city council chambers, the old chambers, and they were all against it. It was going to ruin the world. We've owned that property now for 20 years, and we've had no issues with the neighbors. Monica Vernon was the chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission when that was passed, and I think she said some 15 years later in a city council meeting when she was the mayor pro tem that she appreciated that we worked hard and kept our properties up and rented to good people, and so it's not a detriment. So I guess full circle on your question, we're able to work with the communities because of that track record. So if you don't have that track record and you want to develop, you just have to start. You just have to start. You have to kind of learn the ropes and kind of go in and meet with the community development people and city staff and just go through the process and, to one of your former guests on your podcast, if you do a duplex, it's a great place to start, or fourplex. Just try one, and then the process is kind of the same, whether it's 2 units or more. You just learn, just like we did.
Yeah. So it's the average size of on a multifamily, because I don't see a whole lot of 200 units or more in our area.
Right.
But, definitely 100. I mean, where's your sweet spot?
So it's a good question. If we could do 100 or 120, if we could do 140 on that site, we probably would. Once you're there, you manage it, you build it, the economies of scale start to help you. You have a few more units. You don't see a lot of 200 unit projects. Tiffin is a 240. That's one of our largest, just because there's a little more risk in that kind of scale of putting that number of units on there. But I would say our sweet spot's in that low hundreds.
So you just mentioned risk as far as the construction risk of a new development versus an existing property that has a history of rent rolls, and it's in an area that's already been developed and been around for 20 years. So there's a history with that. So my last podcast developer guest basically said, the more you know about the market and the more you do it, the less the risk goes down, because you just have the knowledge or the experience, I guess, of what's risky and what's not. I mean, but when you break a new development like that, like out at Tiffin, how do you gauge that? How do you measure that? How do you deal with that?
So we have kind of two things that happen when we assess risk or assess a new project. One category is a project like out by the airport in Prairie, where we already have units and communities in that either school district or that area. So, and we can gauge how our properties are performing, and can we fill, if you don't have any vacancy, then you probably should be looking at maybe expanding the footprint. If you go into a new community where you don't maybe have that existing portfolio to draw on, then you go to the professionals to do market research, third-party market research, appraisers, market studies, and then your own boots on the ground. You take a look at the market. What are people renting it for? Do you think you can compete in that market? And I would say I don't know if it gets easier. I just think it's like anything. The more you do, the more comfortable you have with the data, that you can trust what your instincts are telling you.
I was talking to you earlier about some developers in Des Moines that are, it just seems when I'm watching the market and I'm looking at multi-unit apartment complexes, there's been a lot of them for sale that are fairly new. They were developed in 2017, 2018, 2019. So we're in that 5-year sweet spot where they're selling. But you don't sell, do you?
Not very often.
Not very often.
Not very often.
Yeah, you like to long-term hold.
Absolutely.
Right? Add it to the portfolio.
Yeah.
And why do you think they're selling? Why do developers, obviously some people just want to build and they don't want to long-term manage. You think that's what it is?
Oh, I think there's a few models. There's a few different kind of race cars on the track, and we're equity guys. I mean, and gals. That's what we do. We're long-term holders. We sold a limited number of units over 35 years. When we go out and do a project, it really is based on us owning it for a long period of time. So that's our model, and so I think that one of the other models is the, get in, get built, get occupied, and then get out. And when you sell, for the development entity, there can be really good return there. And that is some people's model, and I don't know that one is better than the other. It's just two really different models, and our model has been to own long term, and that will stick with that.
Yeah, because again, that's kind of my pet peeve with syndications and some of the developers that build, is they'll build it and then just get it stabilized and occupied, and then they're going to try to sell it for that high rate of return,
right,
and then roll that money into the next deal, or exchange it, or however, it's, again, real estate's all about taxes and debt, and how you manage it and control it,
right,
and then of course financing,
right,
the financing. So I'm assuming, again, you're using the equity from your previous deals to fund the next deals.
We do. I mean, we've been able over the years, obviously, to grow our equity and grow our cash. So it's easier for us to do transactions today than maybe it was in the beginning. But we've got a lot of really good long-term financial partners. We have 3 or 4 lenders that have been loaning us money since basically the beginning or their beginning. So that track record has helped. And we have a model now that's probably a little different than somebody that might go out and build a duplex. Our model is that we do the construction development lending here local, and then we'll do agency or life insurance non-recourse debt and pay off that local lender. And the local lender likes it because in most cases they keep the operational accounts for the properties. They get to do what they do. They loan us money and we pay them back. And then we put that on the books over a non-recourse, and then we go back to them and we do it again. So it allows us to continue to have that available funding source in the construction development because we're constantly paying them off with the long-term non-recourse. I would urge anybody that's getting started to think about that when they're doing their kind of due diligence to get started, is who's going to be my financial partner. And as you get bigger, you can shop rate a little bit more, and you have enough lenders to look at. When you're new, you kind of need to pick a horse and pick somebody that can also be your ally. Same thing on insurance and accounting, Glattery, now RSM. I mean, they've done our tax work for decades, and they're an integral part of who we are and how we report and so forth.
A personal question that when I was out on your website and I was looking at your vacancies and the empty units, I saw most of them were like 2-bedroom, 1-bath. Mm-hmm. Is that the majority of your units? You don't have 4 and 5 unit?
So good question. Probably yes, and we're trying to remedy that. We're building more 1-bedrooms, a few 3-bedrooms, but the bulk of our book is 2 bedrooms. We're 2-bedroom, 1-bath, 2-bedroom, 2-bath, townhomes. Now we have some different size categories in that 2-bedroom, but for a long time that was what we built a lot of.
I guess that was one of my, I'm not going to call it a mistake, but with student housing, a lot of times they want that density, so there'll be a lot of 4-bedroom.
Right.
And there's houses out there that are 5-bedroom houses. Right. But what I found is those are harder to rent.
Sure.
They're bigger, they're harder to rent, the rents are higher. And to me, 2 bedrooms are kind of that sweet spot.
Sure.
That I kind of told myself I'm never going to do a 4-bedroom again.
Right.
Unless it's a really good student housing property.
Right.
So I guess when I just saw that, I was just like, wow, maybe you know a secret that I don't. Maybe.
No, I don't think so. I think that now, as you grow, as you scale, we talk about needing to make sure that we can satisfy the consumer. One of the things is difficult. We've been very blessed over a long period of time. Our phone rings. We have good occupancy and have for a long time. It's difficult to sit in my office and hear somebody go, "We don't have any units," or "We don't have," And so I talked about a few years ago before COVID that we needed to think about, if we were a car dealership, and we would have an Avalon and a Camry and a Corolla, we need to make sure that for our consumers, our customers, that we have some different price points and some different types of units so we can try to handle everybody. And it doesn't mean we'll always have units, but so that we really worked hard at that. We're a lot of those units that are in the pipeline are different types of units.
Okay, yeah, that's good to hear. So yeah, and I guess I really got that from your website, that obviously the tenants are your customers, and you're there to serve them. Somebody mentioned this the other night, and I thought it was interesting. They were talking about the difference between a property manager and an asset manager, where the property manager, the tenants are the customers, and an asset manager, maybe the owner is the customer. So they're managing that assets, and sometimes they don't always align the views of the owner versus the property manager. So I guess that goes back to your vertical integration, where you do your own property management.
Right. Well, we have both. We have asset managers in-house and property managers that are out on site. I would hope that they work together. At the end of the day, I work for the customer. I work for the resident. My success, or our success as an organization, is based on doing a good job with them. And that starts the day that they're qualified to move in to the day that they move out. And most of our customers don't go rent from somebody else. I mean, most of our customers, if they leave, they're either being transferred or they buy a house.
Yeah.
Fantastic. We're the inbound of new communities and new home ownership in our community. We have had people stay real long periods of time, but that's the bulk of the model. Property manager handles the person one-on-one. Asset manager is closer to the accounting part of our business and just making sure that the asset is performing as best it can, on the expense and the income part of the business.
Yeah, I know. I've had tenants that have built houses or they're wanting to transition to a house, and I think that's great. I've let them out of their leases to hey, when's your house going to be done? Let's time this, or I just
Sure.
need to just give me the notice, because I think that's people would much rather live in a house. And I personally, so let me ask you this question. This will be interesting. I've been asked multiple times, would I rather have 100 houses or a 100-unit apartment building?
I'd rather have both. I think if you can have some diversification of your book, that's important. And if you're out there building your brand, which you're building your brand, Student of Money podcast, and what your events you're having and so forth, then you go, well, why am I doing that? Well, I'm doing that, in my case, I'm doing that because I want people to think about me as a quality option for someplace to live. So if at a local business somebody says, hey, John's coming to town, he needs a place to live, I hope that High is on the list of where they might be referred to get a call. Well, then once they call, I hopefully have some different types of units. So whether I do have some houses, not that many houses, but hopefully back to the different types of cars, hopefully have some different types of units. So I think good real estate assets are good real estate assets, and I think they can be a variety of different types of multifamily. I don't know that one is any better than the other. If I was going to give an advice to a young person, not young in age, but maybe young into the business, is don't get so hung up on trying to have the first one be the Super Bowl. Just get in the game, get engaged, and invest your money. If you want to get in real estate, try. If I can do it, you can do it. I'm not any smarter, trust me, than anybody else that's out there. I've just been able over a long period of time to work at it, and I've had lots of mentors and lots of people that I trust. I will tell you that most of the people in this building are smarter than me. That's part of the secret, is to find really good people and then get out of the way. And so I just my advice would be, get started, find a lender, find some people you can trust, find people like you, mentors that you can ask questions. It's surprising how many people will help you. I think people think, well, they're going to be a competitor, they're not going to help you. Yeah, that's not the way most people think. Most people, if they've been blessed and have an opportunity, they're more than happy to help other people get started.
Definitely. I 100% agree. Real estate is a slow wealth creation tool. It's not a get rich quick. It's just slow, but that's why I like it, because I don't want that fast moving. I don't want to be day trading. I don't want to be doing things that you're having to, have caffeine and I love the slowness of real estate. And I've told people it's slow to get into, it's slow to get out of, but when it's running, there's nothing better.
Right.
So that's why I love it. And it's not rocket science.
Right.
It's going to be, you're lucky for us.
Lucky for us.
Lucky for us.
Yeah.
Perfect. So on LinkedIn on New Year's Eve, I believe it was, you posted something that I thought was awesome and great. So I'm going to quote you on this. It says, no silly resolutions or long-reaching goals for 2023. I have been so blessed in my life to have my family, my friends, and an ability to make a life. The next part is about being in the present.
Right.
So it's just talk about that for a minute.
I just think as you get older, the world, you get a little wiser. Some of the things that maybe were important when you were 20 or 30 aren't as important. And, for me, my family and my friendships are paramount. My faith, my, trying to be a good person. And I feel like a lot of our young people are under a lot of pressure these days. And so I don't know that it was aimed at anyone, but I just want to put out there that it's okay to, not have thousands of high-reaching goals. You can have some goals. You can have some goals. I have goals. I have goals in my pocket. I have carried around my written goals for 30 years. And so I have goals but the post was about, I've just spent a couple weeks out in California with my daughter, my whole family, my new grandson. And that picture that was on the post was taken by one of my girls. I was standing looking out into the Pacific at Catalina Island, and I really just feel blessed. I just feel blessed beyond belief to be able to have my life and have the friendships I have. And so, yeah, so.
Yeah, that's the other thing I kind of preach to people too is when we're doing all of this, family first, and make sure your spouse is on board, what you're doing. When I left my employer back in 2002 and started my first business, it was a lot of stress, a lot of hands-on, doing all the work, and without that security net. But what I found out is there's nothing more secure than having your own business and,
right.
and doing your own thing. And
right.
But you can't forget the family. And I kind of made a promise to my wife that I'd be home at 5. Sunday was family day.
Sure.
And all of these things. And now I actually get to run hard for a few more years because I'm an empty nester.
Congratulations. I have a few more years. I have 5, so I have 1 left at home.
One left at home.
Yeah, 1 left
so,
at home.
It's okay if I'm not home for dinner tonight, because the kids aren't there
Right.
and they're starting to have their own life.
Right.
And my daughter's doing architecture at Iowa State.
Wow.
And I'm really excited about that because, boy, if I want to get into development, I might have an architect
There you go.
within
awesome.
the family,
That's awesome.
So, that's a big part of it is making sure that your vision and your plans are the same as your spouse's and that you're heading in both in the same direction. You're both doing the same things and being transparent on what's going on. And
Amy and I have been married for it'll be 25 years in August, and she's the president of High Property Management, and she's one of those people I mentioned before that is smarter than me and helps run what we do, along with raising our 5 children. So I'll just end with this, that, about 27 years ago, Amy and I scraped together. She's going to school at Mount Mercy, and I was backfilling basements, and we scraped together, the money we had, and we bought a little house out on Woodridge Drive, and we live there today. So
yeah.
I've been very blessed to have my 5 kids and have her and have this business, and I appreciate you taking the time to want to talk to somebody like me.
Yeah, well, thank you. So I think, we'll wrap that up. So again, I appreciate you inviting me down and agreeing to the interview.
Absolutely.
It's been great.
Hopefully
a lot of good nuggets.
Yeah.
A lot of those good nuggets. So Darryl High, appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank you very
absolutely.
much.
Absolutely. Good luck with your things going forward. And if I can ever help you or anybody else, I'm happy to sit down and talk to them. If anybody you want to get into a little more deeper about the development, I'm happy to try to help.
Yeah. All right, guys, there you have it. That's our interview with Darryl High from High Properties. Darryl's been in the construction and real estate business for 35 years, and I think he dropped a lot of information in that 30-minute interview. So next week, we're going to interview another person that you're not going to want to miss. It's going to be our guest speaker, and our Real Estate Investing Mastermind launch event, February 22nd at the Cedar Rapids Public Library from 2 to 4 o'clock. You're going to want to be there, so check back with us next week and see who the guest speaker is going to be. That's all I've got for this week. I'll see you next time on Student of Money.